there. Hey, everybody. My goodness, it's August? Is that right?
What? Oh, God.
I know. Bit ridiculous, right? And no echo, we're all good?
Sounds good.
Sounds
Here.
good. Sounds good to me, too. Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for popping in. I know we're started right here on time today. Yeah, thanks for joining us on Boss Rush. We meet every Friday, of course, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. And I am one of your co-hosts here. My name is Chris Melissinos, Principal Evangelist for Video Games at AWS. And with us...
Hey, Dean Takahashi, lead writer for GameSpeed at VentureBeat. Also organized the GameSpeed Summit events. One's coming on October 28th, and GameSpeed at the Game Awards is December 12th.
Awesome. And...
Whoa, volume just came up crazy.
I told you, stop with all your beta builds. Go ahead.
All I could hear was your music. I was like, whoa. Hey, I'm Mark DeLoura. I'm a technologist, and yeah, that's it.
And that's it?
That's what I do.
Well, hello, technologist, and hello, originator of GameSpeed and one of our most prolific game reporters in the entire industry, Mr. Takahashi. So, yeah, we give him a little shout there. And unfortunately, Susan is not going to be able to join us today. She sends her apologies, but a little chaos broke out across the pond. So she's over there taking care of whatever it is she has to take care of. But we're going to go ahead and jump right in because there's a lot, I think, to talk about this week. Yeah, with that, I'm going to get my browser situated here. I was telling Mark I was running in here to the studio this morning after taking one of my kids to get the wisdom teeth yanked. So it was a little chaos here this morning for me as well. But look, everything seems to be working. So I think we're okay. All right, Mr. Takahashi, as always, why don't you lead us off with, what are a couple of top big news pieces we need to discuss?
See, do we want the bad news or the bad news this week?
No. Yeah, unavoidable, right? Unfortunately, unavoidable this week.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of tough news this week. This morning, I guess one that hits kind of hard is Game Informer is shutting down after 33 years.
Whoa, I hadn't heard that.
And yeah, that's sort of a fresh news piece this morning, and yeah, it's shocking that GameStop's publication is shutting down, and even before the GameStop chain does. So it's been the source of many great journalists over the years, like a great place for all the different high-level editors of the industry, and that they had the widest reach. They're available in GameStop stores. They switched to digital, and I just couldn't make business happen anymore. So that's sad for the industry, I think, and it's a trend in game journalism. Yikes, getting a little close to home here.
Yeah, well, it is a huge loss for game journalism, and the value even of like physical media. I mean, look, I know those of us been around long enough. I still have like issues of magazines from this one's from September of 1982. Maybe a little outdated. This one from February of 1985. But I use this to also explain to people that's how when we started getting in this space, learned how to program, is typing and all of this stuff from the back of the magazines, right? So there is still, it makes me sad that we don't have the physicality of these things. I know, yes, of course, everything is digital and, vaporized, right? But quality journalism around this industry is still vitally important. I obviously, without knowing much, but knowing, that Game Informer is connected to, of course, GameStop, because of that acquisition, right? As that company is going through whatever right sizing it's going through, it's just feels like this one is a casualty of that process, and it's very sad to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to see.
Yeah. Well, you know what though? Counter that with a good piece of news with PC Gamer magazine, right? So PC Gamer continues to hire. And one of the posts that came out earlier this week on LinkedIn was, hey, we've managed to continue to grow, right? So there are spaces where it is growing, unfortunately.
And they have a new editor in chief and editor for the U.S. as well. Yeah. So
Yep.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Good to see it happen. Let's see. I guess somewhat good news on another side is the Esports World Cup is taking place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia now, and they've got a bunch of tournaments all aggregated together, all happening at the same time, and they've had 1 million festival visitors in Riyadh, and 177.5 million hours watched so far in the first 4 weeks. It comes to a close on August 24th and 25th. And it's sort of a very big investment in esports. They're going to have a $60 million prize pool, and winners have taken home $16.5 million in prizes already. And the rest is going to be split between the remaining winners of the 13 events and $20 million for the clubs as well. So very good. 60,000 tickets were sold to the different tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty good.
Where they're just lucky I wasn't there, to scoop that top prize there. And
where would I go to watch this stuff right now?
Yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah,
cool.
where do we see it? Where do we find? Is there a place they're live streaming this stuff, Dean?
Esports World Cup. If you search on that, you'll find it pretty easily, I think.
Okay. And
next year they have an Olympics affiliation that's going to be starting with this as well.
Yeah.
So very, very big news in the esports space, and that kind of sort of forward-thinking investment is definitely keeping esports alive right now. And I think it's easy for a lot of folks to pull back right now, but this is one space where you see them sort of thinking 10 years ahead.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and then back on the bad side, Intel has not had an easy time lately, and AMD has big architectural advantages with their Zen-based processors now. NVIDIA has really been doing so well on the AI processor side as and graphics. And so there hasn't been as much space for Intel to operate, and they're laying off 15,000 people at least by the end of this year. They said 15% of the workforce, and that actually adds up to about 18,795 people. So a lot of jobs disappearing at Intel, and it's shocking to see how much sort of turnaround there has been in the market, where Intel was once the world's largest company in revenues in the space, and also the largest manufacturer and of chips. And so they're still investing quite heavily in manufacturing, especially in the U.S., but and those plans are not really affected by this. But it's a big earthquake in the industry.
Yeah, I mean,
this comes back to games. I mean, one of AMD's strong points is that it has, a very strong lock on consoles.
Right. I was having a conversation earlier this morning with an industry colleague about exactly that, and just terrible. My best goes out to everyone who's affected, and hopefully able to find something soon and soft landings for all. But it reminds me of Andy's book years ago, right? Only the Paranoid Survive, and we are not in that era anymore. It is no longer about worrying about somebody coming in to take your stuff. It is now about how do you pivot to meet where the market is moving. And sometimes, right, companies can become a victim of the momentum of their heritage, I like to say, right? It's kind of hard to get out of the way of that boulder or pivot it when, that is how you sustain yourself for the longest period of time. And the disruptive dismissing new technologies that move in without understanding possible long-term impact, right, is the number one way, right, to be kind of, dislodged from the path that you're on. And, is it going to really be these smaller distributed, processors, lower cost? Look, I went through this at Sun, right? We were the same exact way. Oh, Intel, I remember when I joined the company and Intel had, in their Pentium 3, they had a problem with the math coprocessor, right? And
the original Pentium, yeah.
Yeah, and exactly. And the company had shirts made that said, "I am Pentium of Borg, precision is futile, prepare to be approximated." And it's kind of like, yeah, that's not the threat. And then it came up to grab the data center. Oh, this little graduate project from this kid named Linus. Yeah, that's a really cute operating system. Boom, light explodes again. You can't be so proud of your creations and stuff that you're dismissive of new things that come in. So check your bias, check yourself, right? Dig deep. And it's a difficult thing to do, right? Especially when you're a company of that size. And it's, no clear answers. And hindsight being 2020 is super easy. So, I'm sure I'm preaching the obvious here. It's just sad to see that happening there. I hope whatever changes they make in their lives, and continue that legacy of innovation and kind of shifting the market, right, with their creations. So,
yeah. Well, moving on, Bungie laid off 220 people as well this week. It was on the last day of July, and it sort of sat into the month. 220 jobs during the month of July, though. There had been almost no layoff activity during the month. I think there were 150 jobs that were lost. Compared to more than 11,000 that disappeared in the first half of the year, right? And so Amir Sadfat was looking at these numbers and observing that the recovery was essentially starting, and that if you looked at the whole year, what he says you can expect to happen now is 11,000 layoffs in the first half of the year, and about 2,000 to 3,000 in the second half of the year. But Bungie's announcement here is very sobering. It comes after I think they had 100 layoffs back in December. Sony has acquired them, and Sony is absorbing 155 jobs from Bungie into Sony Interactive Entertainment. So that's nice. They were able to sort of find roles for people, but not for everybody. So this is about 17% of Bungie's workforce, and I think it sort of just points to the notion that live service games take a lot of people to put together and put out, but they don't last forever. And Destiny 2 have had nice runs, but there's nothing ready to replace them right now, and so we have this layoff.
I think it's difficult when you get to games of this size and companies of this size. It's hard to justify a big game production. When you're a large size company, you don't want to take on the small ones, right? You've heard all this before. Like you hear like people from Google say like, well, we're not going to go after this line of business because it's not $1 billion business. But then if you were only taking bets on high value scenarios and one of them comes apart, like you don't have a ground floor of other revenue to keep things going. I'm not sure that's what's happening here, but in general, I think as we get bigger and bigger game productions, this seems like a bigger and bigger risk in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And it's something we've been talking about now for months here too, right? Which, okay, going after those bigger experiences that require more investment in time and money and those things from the player's perspective, when the rest of their world is moving towards shorter form, bite-sized content for the vast majority of things they consume, it's a disconnect with where the modern media audiences lie. Yes, we're still going to need those big tentpole games, but it's not everybody's going to be able to make them, and not everyone's going to be able to survive that. So it is really about risk mitigation, creating surface area for opportunities, right? Lean into the big ones, but give a chance, for some of the smallers. And I do have to say, back when JR went back to EA, right? And if you remember the time where it was like Henry Hatsworth, do you remember that game where it was a bit like adventure game, but on the bottom of the screen, it was like a Tetris style game? Like that should never have come out from an EA, but it did. Right, games like Mirror's Edge, stuff like that, where they were taking risks on new IPs, right, all over the place. I felt that was such this innovative, like little period of time for a company of EA size to go after. Where are we doing that again in the larger companies? It's happening in the indie space, triple I, right, double I, single A. That's where it's all happening right now. So there's a lesson to be learned here if we want to listen to history.
There is. It's so hard, though. I mean, I think. As we know, we've all been in these kind of positions as well, where you're trying to manage risk, and you totally understand why decisions are made the way they are. I mean, we just talked about Intel, and it feels a little bit to me like Intel managed risk the other direction, right? They managed it too hard, and they're not taking enough risks, maybe. It's just we're all people. We're all trying to learn from each other. Sometimes we learn the wrong things to apply to our situation, and man, I just feel for everybody who winds up in this. These scenarios. It's hard.
Yeah, it's very tough. I mean, I am still encouraged to see interesting, or good news, even in this kind of context of a very tough time. I don't think I saw the story on Mountaintop this week, and a new shooter game called Spectre Divide. And it was started by Nate Mitchell, who had nice exit as one of the co-founders of Oculus, right? And so he started this more than 4 years ago, and they just started. He gathered a bunch of veterans in the shooter space, and they just kept on iterating over and over again. And they were big fans of Counter-Strike and tactical shooter games, and they came up with Spectre Divide, and they showed it off this week, and it's actually really well done and clever design, where you control your one player. It's 3 versus 3 multiplayer, and then you control 2 bodies, and you can switch between them. And you're just one player, and so you can position like your sort of body double player at one part of the map, and then you can stake out the ground you have to protect, on another part of the map, and then with one keyboard press, you can switch to the other player. Like if one gets killed, you're still alive in the match because you still have one other sort of doppelganger to control. And they call this a Spectre, and then you can set up different situations, like you can take a peek around a corner, shoot at somebody, and they start watching you. But in the meantime, you could throw a puck over to another part of the map and switch to your other player and go around and outflank that player. So normally, it's like in a multiplayer game, you would tell your fellow colleagues to go and outflank somebody, but in this case, you're the one who knows how to do it and outflank the other person. So you do it yourself, and so you ambush the other person who's watching your other target. And so it's very interesting gameplay that results from this, and
Sounds neat.
it was very well done. some of the folks from like Apex Legends are the designers. This Lee Horn is one of those people. So fun to see. Small company with 70 people. Come up with something that maybe Destiny wishes they had right now.
Yeah. Yeah, the last time I played a game where you controlled both characters and was super compelling was Brothers.
Oh yeah.
What just a wonderful, touching game too.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, kindness and caring through the whole thing, and it was a really great play mechanic. Having to control both of them with different capabilities. I love that. That kind of reminds you of like Thomas Was Alone, right? Each character has a separate ability, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cool. I'll have to check that one out, Dean. That's awesome.
Yeah. So fun to find little things like that.
Yes.
And let's see.
Nintendo financials came out.
Yeah, Nintendo earnings are out.
Oh. Yeah,
The,
discuss.
Well, the revenues are down quite a bit year over year, like down 50%, and so it's clear that the Switch has pretty much reached the end of its life. Everybody's expecting the Switch 2 to be coming out soon, and so that's not doing much for new Switch sales. But they've had a very good run. I think they're above 145 million copies of the Switch sold to date, and so that definitely beats their previous big selling Wii console, which was about 101 million. So yeah, I think Nintendo also has a pretty good slate of games every year, and so I think they even with declining hardware sales, they can pull out profitable performances here. By comparison, I think Microsoft reported earnings this week, and I was I'm pretty sad to see something like Activision Blizzard's financial performance and the transparency of it disappear now into Microsoft's earnings, which is two sentences or two phrases even on just how the game part of the business is going, and that's such a large part of the game industry now that we have lost transparency into. So that's my complaint. But their earnings were up quite a bit, and it was from the benefit of acquiring Activision Blizzard.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good. Hardware sales though for the Xbox family are down 42% from a year ago. So same kind of situation as Nintendo here, and it feels like the sad thing about this generation is that these consoles are above 5 years for sure, and they're coming to an end on a sort of like a regular console cycle. I mean, the Switch has lasted a lot longer for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but Xbox slowing down this much means that they really need to get a new console out into the market. And the sad thing about this generation was for the first couple of years, they were stuck in a supply chain disaster, from the pandemic. And so they couldn't ship a lot of those units that you would normally ship in the first couple of years of a console's life. And so I think, as far as hardware goes, this generation has got to be a disappointment. So we'll see how fast they can adjust their plans here, because I think really the planning is always like, we're going to launch a console, we're going to launch it as late as possible so that we can sort of amortize that investment in the hardware over time. But once sales start falling apart, we can accelerate the launch of the new console. And so I'm pretty sure that's where Microsoft is, because when all of their data leaked, during the FTC accidentally leaked this information, it pointed to a 2028 launch for the next Xbox, and I see no way for them to wait that long for their next console.
Yeah.
It is a curious thing about the current generations of consoles, the extent to which they use quote unquote off the shelf parts compared to how that used to be. Like the consoles, like hardware wise, are much more similar than they used to be. They use just because the complexity of creating custom parts is so much more complicated than it used to be.
Yeah.
And more risky financially, and so yeah, I can kind of imagine that it would be a little bit easier to accelerate your console cycle if you did decide to pull to 2027 or 2026. But it's still, there's so many moving parts and there's so much complexity.
Yeah,
You know, it's been there a number of times.
Yeah, you have definitely more than Dean and I have. But I would say yes, and the tools and the tooling pipelines we have for game development have now kind of coalesced around standard engines, standard process for doing these things. And so now it's no longer, you have your custom engine to do different things on different systems. Now it's kind of like, well, if everyone's kind of coalescing around those kind of de facto standards for development, you're going to build your platform to be able to ingest that stuff. So, but it's not just one-sided, right? It's the hardware side is also being driven by the fact that people are predominantly using Unity and Unreal. Okay, you got to make sure your platform can accept that, right? So it's a maturation actually of the industry. It's a maturation of the art form and the technology behind it, right? But to your point, it also then makes it. I mean, I've got a PS5 at home, and I still pay for PS Plus, and I'm like, I can't tell you the last time I actually picked up the controller.
I have
it makes me sad.
That's my little beef about Mountaintop right now is that their tactical shooter game is mouse and keyboard only at the moment, and I am so bad at playing anything with a mouse and keyboard these days. I have to play a shooter with an Xbox controller.
Well, Dean, this nice Nintendo themed keyboard just actually puts these giant red A and B buttons right there. So, and look at that, they even did it in a old person font, right? You've got to make it as big as possible so you know which one you're hitting, right? So I'm with you, buddy.
I use this thing as a mouse. I used to have a really hard time using it for mouse and keyboard games, but now I've gotten used to it.
That looks like an alien head from the side, or a dolphin.
Penguin? Parrot? Penguin. It's called Penguin. It's you can use it with either hand. It works great. Vertical mouse, better on your arm.
Nice.
But it's funny for me to hear that about shooters, because I remember when we used to have conversations about nobody will ever ship a shooter that works as well on console as it works on PC. And remember?
Yes.
Halo came out.
You're right. And then, but then it's if you happen to be playing across platforms, it's like, oh, aim assist, huh? It's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, right. I booted up all my consoles yesterday. I was like, they look a little lonely, and so I booted them up and flashed the new, software updates, and was trying to catch up with what was being advertised on there and trying to understand. Went back and played some Geometry Wars. Amusingly. And then I booted up my Quest 3 and looked at that, and it is just interesting, to compare all of the hardware platforms and see the ways that everybody, what they're approaching, which ones are talking more about, hey, you can download Netflix, versus, hey, here's the latest game, or here's the latest AAA game, versus here's all of our indie games. And I always find that interesting to look at what the priorities are of the various hardware platforms.
Yeah.
There was a good story by opinion piece by Rob Fahey in our competition gamesindustry.biz about the opportunity cost of blockchain games. And he used the example of the Olympics games. It was many iterations they had so far of the Mario and Sonic Olympics games, and there wasn't one this year. And everybody was wondering, why didn't one of these new Mario and Sonic Olympics games come out on the consoles? And it turned out that when IOC was deciding this, NFTs were the big hot thing of a few years ago, and so they made a bet on that, and had a smaller game come out with NFTs, and so they were hoping to sell Olympics NFTs along with this game, and I don't even know if it came out. I don't know what it was, but Fahey pointed out that this is what happens when you sort of jump on the latest craze and you crater something that had been a very good thing for the industry, going for many years, and so this game, the Mario and Sonic game, was generating a lot of revenue. Not a huge game, but it was generating very profitable revenue.
Yeah, it was making its money back, right?
Yeah,
and extending the brand. Yeah, I have his article up here for those that are watching the live stream, and one quote they pulled out was, "The point here isn't a dunk on NFTs. Our ground is all too well trodden at this point, but rather to emphasize that when these kinds of fads sweep the industry, they impose genuine cost and damage that can last for years down the line." And yeah, I mean, yes. I don't, I don't know how to further agree with that. I guess, other than to say, and we've had, I think, just discussion in general. When we're making these types of decisions, I don't know where the decisions are made, but having people that are in this industry and built it and really understand it, making some of those decisions, I think, is important, right? Versus, hey, I've been doing this for a year now, and let me tell you what I think. And you're like, that's great. I love that point of view. Prove it, please, before we go ahead and create something that's been around for years and makes money, is profitable.
Yeah.
And before you sort of decide to cancel something, maybe you just keep that thing going and experiment on the side to see if something else can replace it. And in this case, they did that too early, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too bad they didn't. I mean, they could have said, we're just going to open it up. Let's have a game jam, and let's have an Olympics themed like global game jam, and see what gets created and generate some buzz and excitement that way. I mean, I'm kind of thinking, I feel a little bit like we're at a weird moment in time compared to the last 15, 20 years, where there's been this slow decrease in how difficult it is to create games. Right? We've had bursts of social and mobile where everything is really simple again, and you see like simple puzzle games created with simple tools, and then all the complexity builds again. At the moment, while we do have Unity, Unreal, Godot, those tools are still pretty complex, and so like I will keep an eye on the presidential related games that come around every cycle, and boy, are there hardly any of those these years either. There's like a miss on the Olympics front, there's a miss on the presidential related games, campaign related games front, and we need to start making tools that are a little simpler again, accessible again. I get excited about like the AI stuff being integrated into Roblox. If we can figure out the ethics side of that, I think that those kind of tools getting more and more integrated into the mainline tools are interesting. I know Unity and Unreal are working on this stuff too, but it'll be interesting to watch. As we're talking about the next generation of hardware platforms as well, I have to think those teams are also thinking about, yes, we're going to work with Unity and Unreal, but how do we make these platforms simpler to work on?
Yeah. I do think that those consoles are definitely going to have some serious neural processing units in them.
Right? Yeah. You can't just stick a GPU in there now and call it a day. I think you've got to put something in there that's got some more custom hardware.
Yes. But allow me to be that one voice at the table that also says yes to all of that, but also remember, it has to be a good game. It doesn't matter if we're going to make it easier or whatever. If your game is terrible, no graphics, no pros, it's going to fix that problem, right?
Have you played Gorilla Tag?
But what makes that compelling? It's not the It's not the fidelity of those meshes.
It's not that it's a good game. It's that it's like the community is there and has interesting interactions. All your friends are there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe you didn't need to have a great game in there.
But what it did is it created the framework for a great game to emerge. right? And the players years ago when I looked at, Farmville and all that other stuff, they had that old. My wife was the one that actually convinced me, no, it's really a game, and I was just like, how is this a game? And she's like, because it's a game to whatever end I choose it to be, right? I plant things in certain patterns because I like the way they bloom. I time things to do this. So she had this whole like meta game that she constructed for herself out of this that was awesome for her, like as a game. And I'm like, well, I can't argue that. Right. Yeah. So, but yeah, sometimes bad games are just bad games. So making it easier to get stuff on the screen. Great. Still has to be a good game.
yeah. But you're going to make 10 bad games in the process of making one good
100%.
All easier to make. And you can make those 10 shots a little less painful.
Well, right here from 1985 is the Bomber, the Forbidden Crypt.
Oh my gosh.
For the VIC.
Whatever happened to that game?
64 plus 4. And the C16. I may do an episode where I just start typing in those games, just run a marathon of me typing in a game and then trying to get it to run, and then trying
to debug it.
Yeah, but then people going, "What the hell is a syntax error?" And you're like, "Okay."
Kids, let me tell you.
There was sort of a spin-off piece of news around the Olympics, where everybody was fascinated with a couple of the shooters in the Olympics. Shooting sport, where they
from Turkey.
Their posture more than anything made them very iconic, I guess.
Yeah.
And so, what was it? Kim Ye-ji from South Korea. Her pose and how she looked, and cool little sort of spectacle like out of the glasses that she had, made everybody think she should be a main character in a video game.
Well, they already had one, right? They already had one at the Olympics this year in the opening ceremony. So
this other guy, Yusuf Dikech from Turkey as well. Everybody says this guy's the perfect hitman character.
Did you see the picture of him shooting? Mark, did you see?
No.
So everyone had these like custom, sights and stuff like that, and carbon fiber, this, that. He literally walked out, no sights or anything, one hand in his pocket holding the gun and just firing. And everyone's just like, when did John Wick show up to the Olympics? Because it was amazing. It was really, really amazing.
Yeah, that was fun. So always good to be entertained by surprising things.
Yes, for sure.
I agree. How much longer does the Olympics go? We've got another week?
Oh, at least, another week, right?
Nice. And there, along the funnier stories this week too, was Date Like Goblin.
Yay!
New dating service for gamers that lets them meet each other in their comfort zone, where you create your Goblin profile and talk about your gaming availability, and then search for matches where you go on a date by playing a game, and talk over voice chat. So funny.
Yeah, and what a great idea. We had the opportunity to meet Lise Keeney, who is the founder of A Date Like Goblins, and actually Mark and I, Susan and Lise, sat together just to kind of scream into the void during GDC. I think maybe we had one person listening to us, but she was explaining why she started the company and really her whole concept around it. It was really cool to listen to. And she just posted this week that she had her first date in through her platform online, and how much fun it was. And I love that. I absolutely love that. So, yeah, very cool.
Yeah, she had worked for other dating apps like Hinge, Tinder, and OkCupid before. It's interesting new gaming business there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Very, very cool. Go on dates in your favorite video games while voice chatting. And what did it say here? The era of swiping is over. We're for the introverts, the neurospicy and the perpetual third wheels who know their person is out there just having a hard time finding them. Love is a game is crossed out, battlefield is crossed out, and it just says both. Love is both. It's time to play. Awesome. Good job. Really good job. Where would we have our... Yay! A little applause there for Date Like Goblins. Definitely go ahead and check it out. Oh, they're super excited about that one.
And then one of the more unusual sort of releases this week was Activision talked about how they were releasing the Call of Duty Warzone map, the Caldera map, and its data is open source for non-commercial use. So you can make mods for this map now, but you just can't charge money for it. But it's more for research and education purposes that they released this. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And but yeah, they're skating very close to modding, you know, and you know, I think that, you know, they probably ought to make that jump over into modding and UGC and allow people to make their own games for these things, because you know they're probably going to find that there could be some very popular mods that result. I think they do want to police it just so that, you know, they don't have copyright problems and things like that.
Sure.
But so tapping into the creativity of users and super fans, I think, is actually really helpful for other games. So.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love it. It's great to see folks releasing art assets and data. I spent a bunch of time this past week talking to people who were trying to release research data sets so that they could work with academia on you know, different research things that are going on right now. And I'm happy to see more and more companies are willing to have those collaborations, because it's just going to push the industry forward, you know, in various ways more strongly. So congratulations. Good job.
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
So EA had their earnings report as well, and I think they had a lift over excitement around college football. They released the game on July 19th after the most recent quarter was over, but EA Sports College Football returned after a decade absence for the first time, and they went to the trouble of getting licenses for likenesses from more than 10,000 college players. So this was a lot of work for them to do it, but they picked it up again because of a court ruling that said it was illegal for the NCAA to stop the athletes from making money from their likenesses, and so EA is paying them something like $600 plus a free game, and they sold 5 million copies out of the gate in the first 11 days. So that'll help them in the next quarter. And you know, it's a very interesting time for EA Sports in that way, in that, you know, there's no NCAA license. It's just called EA Sports College Football, and it's now just like, you know, EA Sports FC, well, which has no FIFA license anymore.
Right. Yeah, it is a really interesting, weird, you know, place that whole genre, right? The sports genre, specifically licensed, you know, official alignment with those leagues exists today, right? Because to your point about, you know, FIFA, yeah, guess what? People are going there for the game. It's still amazing. Like, they didn't require the license for people to go ahead and get behind it anyway, right? It was for the love of the game there. But which is very different, you know, back during the Dreamcast era when NFL 2K and 2K1 came out and were sucking all the oxygen out of the room. And then EA had tied up the NFL license for a decade behind that, right? And then that game basically fell away because people weren't buying it there. So we've shifted into this different kind of weirder space, right? Where what is actually holding the weight of engagement? Is it the game itself, like I was saying before, it has to be a great game? Or is it the licensing on top of it, right? One can make the argument that they're changing in favor of the gameplay over the license. So
I thought it was interesting the press that I saw about EA college football game was EA saying that they were using AI to generate the players. Wasn't I don't know that it was detailed exactly what that meant, but there's definitely if you search for do a quick search, you'll find a couple of articles about it where Andrew Wilson, CEO of EA, says, "Yeah, we couldn't have done this without AI." I don't know what this means. Did they take 2D shots and find some way to extrude them into 3D using, was it generative AI? Was it regular AI? Because we've been doing that kind of stuff off and on with different technologies over time.
oh yeah,
I'd be curious to hear
I know
more.
I know that if they were unsuccessful in getting a license from a player, that they would just replace that the face of that player with somebody more generic. And I don't know if maybe AI had played the role in sort of filling out those players, but yeah, they couldn't get a license from every single athlete, and so interesting that they said that about AI.
oh, but I just heard here from the Mad Peacock, Stephen Peacock. Hey there, buddy. That it was called out. It was not Gen AI.
Okay, it was
So-
AI.
Yeah, AI. AI.
So Andrew Wilson talked up the next Battlefield game during the analyst call,
Oh yeah.
but he didn't say anything about when it's going to ship and when they're going to have beta. But they noted that the franchise has passed 25 million players in the last 12 months, all playing Battlefield 2042 Season 7 or other old versions of Battlefield. And so people are waiting for this, and they're excited. And he says, "I am excited about what is to come next as we continue to make progress across our strategic priorities, and we're going to develop an epic Battlefield experience." But no saying when.
Right.
So
Oh,
we'll see
Battlefield.
what happens there.
I'd still go back and play 1942 because it was just an awesome game. Actually, Mark and I, years ago, and I'll find it and I'll post it up on LinkedIn. I've got some photos of a LAN party that Mark and I were part of back in 2004, 3, something like that, where we had a beta of 1942. That friends gave us. We had like 30 people at a hotel lobby in Reston, Virginia, and we played it for 48 hours. And Dean, the coolest part about it was we told everybody that they couldn't wear headphones. Everybody had to have speakers. So in the lobby of this hotel, it just sounded like a war was going on in the lobby throughout the night because everyone had their speakers cranked. It was great. And that was Tom Ham. Shout out to Tom Ham, who was one of the coordinators of that. That was awesome.
Hey, Peacock was asking about the OpenUSD scene generator from SIGGRAPH. Did you guys follow it? So I only just barely followed that. Did you follow that?
It has a lot of support now. I mean, it's got 30 companies behind it. And USD started out with just Pixar open sourcing their 3D file format standard, and OpenUSD is getting lots of support. As an example, Activision is exporting all of that map data for the Warzone map into OpenUSD. So that's some support for it as well. And OpenUSD sounds pretty nerdy, but it feels to me like it's part of the glue for the metaverse. And eventually having real interoperability among all kinds of platforms like commerce platforms or games or Roblox, UGC platforms. Yeah, so it's kind of the high end standard, I guess, and then there could be more like a low end web standard as well that will coexist
like
with
GLTF.
Yeah.
But yeah, NVIDIA, lots of big companies are pushing for OpenUSD.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting. It seems like NVIDIA has been pushing on OpenUSD for a while, and you're right. Like it came out of Pixar. I think I think I haven't looked at it for a couple of years, but the vibe on it for quite a while was not ready for prime time for video games, not for something real time. I don't know whether that's changed. If it's being used just as an export and sharing format, maybe that doesn't matter. You can always pull it in and convert it to your own format. But I should sounds like I should look at it again.
Yeah, one thing that it has been very successful in is digital twins for the enterprise, and so NVIDIA's Omniverse, uses it, and Omniverse has reached some thousands of companies now that are making digital twins of factories and other enterprise industrial sort of locations, so that they can learn from digital design how to exactly to create one of these places, and then before spending any money perfecting the design in digital form and then launching it in real life once the design is good. So it's very profitable kind of venture for different big companies to use. So BMW is an example of a company that's designing all its factories with the Omniverse and OpenUSD. And they're I guess it's interesting to them because they have to reconfigure these factories all the time, right? And so they redesign it in the digital twin, and then launch it in real life once it's ready. So it's pretty useful technology there.
Yeah, very much so, right? And then it lets you avoid, things like, human casualty, injury, that kind of stuff. And you get to experiment and play around with, how you can stress an environment to figure out where to go. I'd spent some time actually doing some of that work at a prior company. And how do you, use machine learning, and how do you put all the intelligence on localized on-prem hardware to be able to run all kinds of simulation to figure out what you can put effectively into production and all that good stuff. I've always maintained that if you're going to do that, you also have to build retraining programs for the people that you're displacing, right? Technology coming into the world can't just wholesale throw people out of the way. You have to figure out a way to bring everybody along. So, right, and it all has to be part of that. But, another example of a digital twin, if you all recall, before Aloft was a brand, they had built that Aloft hotel in Second Life. Right? And let people come in and go, oh, I like this open concept and this industrial look and feel, and and they used all that data in basically helping to determine the final design of the Aloft platform, which is really cool, right?
Yeah. Amazon, your company too, is using it in all the warehouses and using it for all the robotic parts of the warehouses now too.
Wait, what business? What are you talking about? Yeah, Papa Amazon. That's right.
I've heard that. Oh man.
Mark. Oh yeah, I was gonna say, Mark. Are there any other big news stories that popped out at you this week?
Any other big? There's always big news stories. But I'm not sure that there's anything particularly relevant. I mean, I'm always keeping an eye on all the AI stuff, right? So there was a note from NTIA and the Biden administration that they're going to keep an eye on open weight AI models, which was interesting. Andre, formerly of OpenAI, tweeted out an amusing video this morning where he chained together a bunch of tools to create a video narration of yesterday's news, which was pretty entertaining because it used a music generation tool, a lyrics thing, and something that processed the news, created videos, and I think he edited them together. But it was amazing. Andre Karpathy. So yeah, there's always tons of interesting AI stuff related going on.
Well, I mean, in addition to the AI stuff that's always going on, Dean has an article up here about Particle unveiling Tachyon, a 5G and AI-enabled single-board computer for everyone. And I know, Mark, you definitely know this about me. Dean, you may, and friends that are listening may know it as well, but I'm a huge sucker for single-board computers. And I've got so many of them at home that from Odroids, all the way down Pine. Remember that Kickstarter project? So I will definitely be checking this out.
This one is Raspberry Pi compatible, so
Oh.
I believe that means you can run Raspberry Pi software on it. So
Yeah.
that's cool. And yeah, it's got 12 tops of
12.
AI neural processing unit performance on it. So uh, you know,
For
not a bad
$150,
little AI tool. Yeah,
for $150, that's crazy.
yeah. That's
That-
Well, actually, yeah, that's interesting that they decided to do that because there is the AI hat for Raspberry Pi. So I don't know if you remember that there was a deal done between Raspberry Pi and Sony like 4 or 5 years ago to
Oh.
do some AI related stuff. I don't really know whatever came out of that. If this effort is that or not, I don't think so. The Raspberry Pi has an AI hat that has a 13 tops module that you can plug on top of your Raspberry Pi. So it's interesting to see that there's enough demand for it that somebody else is making a competitor with it.
Hey, speaking of AI, Stephen Peacock also said the EU AI Act went into law this week.
Oh yeah, the EU AI. Oh, yeah, we could talk about that for an hour. Maybe
Yeah.
we should get Peacock on here and
Yeah, which we do need to do, and
talk
that's
about
what
it at some point.
that's what I do want to do. We want to start bringing in guests, right, on the
Yeah.
weekly. We love it that people show up to hear us, John, about what we believe is cool and important for the week. So we appreciate that vote of confidence. But we also want to bring in other people that have awesome points of view and do that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to work with my colleagues here to figure out the best process to do that and start lining people up to do it. Now that we have all the kinks pretty much worked out, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Yes. Now we can actually start bringing people in.
I'm gonna do a podcast with Alex Seropian
Oh, great.
of Look North World, and so I'm gonna have to trade him and say, hey, you gotta come out on our podcast too.
Oh, yes, you
that
do
sounds
need to
great.
do that because
Always nice talking to him.
so Alex has been making the rounds. So I interviewed him for my Game Industry Legend series. Then he and I did a fireside chat at GDC. He's got his amazing podcast with his co-host now, and he's doing all that stuff with Dean. Now he's doing that podcast. Yes, he's going to have to get on to Boss Rush. So, Alex, yes.
Well, I had a fun interview this week with Randy Pitchford and Jamie Lee Curtis.
What?
What?
Talk to them about the Borderlands movie that's coming out.
Oh, and it was Claptrap, Dean. Last week we were trying to remember the robot's name. It was
yeah.
Claptrap. Yes.
Yeah, Claptrap is actually played by Jack Black.
Yeah.
Which was funny.
Perfect.
But yeah, we talked about Jamie Lee Curtis said that she was quite ready for games to be the inspiration for a lot of movies and sort of emerge as one of the biggest points of culture for entertainment. If it so happens that it's games, she still thinks it's art, and that was interesting.
Yeah.
And then I was amused when she said at the very end of the interview, she said, now get out of your green box, Dean, and go out and get some sunshine.
Yes, I've already threatened this. I'm going to loop in some backgrounds on your green screen because I could do all that from my side now. So now that I have everything worked out, I'm gonna start placing you in some of those spots. But the cool thing about Jamie Lee Curtis, if I'm remembering this correctly, years ago there were these stories about, oh, Jamie Lee Curtis is taking her son to this LAN party event or going to PAX and stuff like. So she's been like around and supportive of the space for a long time. You know.
Yeah. She actually, I asked her about sneaking into these events like Evo, the fighting game event, and she said, she snuck into Evo, and only one person figured it out because she was in cosplay.
Nice.
And was dressed up as Vega, and there was another woman who was dressed up as Vega, and she heard her voice and said, "Are you?" And she goes, "Yes." And she said she snuck into anime cons, and she hosted a cosplay wedding, and
Oh, she's awesome.
she was Jaina Proudmoore from World of Warcraft, and so she says she has cred, especially as a gamer mom, and she bought every iteration of every console for her kid, and said quote, "You've bilked me out of a lot of freaking money."
Our pleasure.
But you know what though? It feels like that is that unspoken undercurrent of people in our era, where they are gamers, like they're doing this stuff, but they just didn't typically talked about it or didn't feel that there was a space for them to do so. Every year it gets better, right? But it's frustrating to know, we know you're all playing, so stop with your nonsense. Like, be Jamie Lee Curtis, get on board with that shit.
I encourage you to check out the movie trailer if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
Oh, it's very cool.
They play the old ELO song, do you want my love? And it feels like almost exactly like you would pitch Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah. And so very retro, very goofy humor, and this sort of interesting emotion in it as well. So
Yeah.
nice movie trailer.
Yeah, very cool. Well, hey guys, I know we are now at the so we're going to head on out as we talk about what we're playing. So why don't we, well, Mark, since you were bringing it up first, why don't we you let us know, what is it that you're playing this week?
I'm finishing Animal Well. I swear to God, I'm finishing it. But I've been playing the Political Machine 2024 because that's what I do.
Oh yeah, the Stardock, right?
Yep.
Yeah, great game.
Yeah.
Great game.
I'm playing the same thing. Unity of Command 2. Steam tells me I'm 62 hours in now.
Woo!
And,
Good for you. That's amazing.
I'm finishing the American campaign.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, I have been leaning into Nintendo World Championship NES edition, a bunch of mini speedrun games in there, and just getting my feet wet because I'm thinking about doing like an extended 12-hour live stream of just trying to crank through all of them. So doing that, I'm going back and playing the Super Mario or the Paper Mario re-release on the Switch, which is also pretty amazing. And today on Rewind, I'm actually going to be digging into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection. I want to thank Tom Russo and the team over there at Digital Eclipse for getting me my Steam copy because I already had it on Switch. So now I don't have to worry about hooking another hardware into my system. And it'll be a lot smoother than the MS-DOS game stuff for last week, which I'm also going to go back and revisit and retest a bunch of shit before I go ahead and throw it all up on a live stream. But that's what I'm playing. Real quick, are there any conferences coming up this month that people should be aware of? Or
Serious Play is coming up in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I'm heading out to Gamescom and DevCom in Cologne, Germany. So that's going to be August 18th through the 20th for DevCom, and then I think the 21st onward for Gamescom, which will include a Jeff Keighley opening night live on the 20th.
Awesome. Yeah, I will not be at Gamescom this year. We will be taking our third and youngest kid to college. So we're going to be moving him in to his dorm during that period. I know, Mark. It's good. Mark and I have known each other for, my goodness. I was just thinking about this the other day, Mark. I first met you, I think, in 2000. All right, Dean, have a good weekend, buddy. We'll see you next week. Yeah, Mark and I met in, I think, 2000 when you were at Game Developer Magazine. And I went in to talk business, and then Mark and I spent, I think, an hour and a half or 2 hours talking about everything but business. And that was like, it's like, you like games? I like games. Yay, we should be best friends.
Yeah, we're great.
I know. It was awesome. So, Mark, are you going to Gamescom? No plan right now, but you keep staring at it.
Yeah, as always. I'm like, I should probably go. Oh, it's so expensive. Oh, I should probably go.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. But that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for this week's Boss Rush. Thank you so much for spending your part of your Friday with us. We really do appreciate it. Let your friends know. Go ahead and repost this stuff onto your own social feeds. We would appreciate it. And that's going to go ahead and take us out. If you're kicking around on the West Coast and you got nothing to do for lunch, head on over to the AWS for Games channel on YouTube or Twitch and watch me fumble my way through a bunch of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games. And I've tested them all already, and they all work in my setup. So we're good to go. No friction. Anyway, everybody, all have a wonderful rest of your day. Have an awesome weekend, and we'll see you next week on Bus Rush. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.